What's going on, YouTube? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Texas Street Stories. And if you haven't already subscribed, help your boy out and hit the subscribe button. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about Robert Delgado, also known as Bad Bob. We're going to be going through his book. Hollywood producers plan their movies so that they will run within a set time frame and end the way that the producers wrote the script. God is not confined to time because God is eternity. God's action-packed book that contains the holy scriptures from where the word script derives tells the reader about God's good life movie that has been running since the beginning of time. And it even tells us at the end of the story. God has the longest script ever produced, with trillions of live actors and real scenes. And from the womb to the tomb has a script been written out for you and everybody else to play out. As I grew from infancy to adulthood, people would describe me in stages, starting with the description that I was a good kid, quiet, and a loner. The list grew even longer as I grew older, a womanizer, a charismatic, and chillingly crazy. Both my enemies and friends in full agreement with my descriptive profile, as if they were profiling a serial killer. But what people couldn't profile were the thoughts that were lurking through the shadows of my mind. I'm the clean-cut kid that would mow a neighbor's lawn and carry their grocery bags in their homes with no one having to ask me to do it. I'm the smiling kid wearing a coat and tie in the old 1960s photograph that was snapped at my Holy Communion ceremony, and the kid who never missed Catholic Mass on Sundays. I'm the kid with I'm the kid with the good school grades who never got in trouble and nor out of school. I'm the kid in the 1972 photograph that is wearing a green military dress uniform and the kid in the 1974 black and white mugshot that is wearing a white prison uniform. I was a religious person, a good student, and a law-abiding citizen that raised gamecocks in the backyard and who loved to fish and hunt in the wild hill. So trying to explain what happened is like trying to explain from where the wind begins and where it stops. People run to psychiatrists, psychic hotlines, astrologers for answer. But do they have the answers to why school-age kids are killing other kids? Or why mothers are killing their own children and dumping newborn infants in trash bins? Or why ministers are having children out of wedlock? Or why police officers are protecting drug shipments for drug cartels? Satan isn't hiding anymore just behind coats, tattoos, nose rings, and spiked hair, but manifesting himself in police uniforms, clergy robes, and in your average clean-cut looking kids. People everywhere seem to have no understanding of what is happening and no understanding of the nature of this battle. It is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. The hearts of the people are waxing colder as the world turns darker. Is there not a man that will stand in the gap between the people and the demon spirits, between the spirit of truth and the spirit of lies, between the way things are and the way things should be? Scripture says there will be terrible times as never seen before in the last days. If people read their Bibles, they will find all the answers that they are seeking and know the prophecy is coming to pass in our age. Because the question being asked today were answered thousands of years ago. I was born and raised in a different age, time, and place that many of you and I can tell you that things are not what they used to be 20 years ago. The seasons of years have faded away only to return. Day and night have never ceased. Jesus came in the flesh and left, but he promised to return. The writing prophets came, and then they were gone. But the words that compiled the Holy Scriptures, that left behind, the Scriptures ensures that in the last days that are here, that Jesus will be returning, not on a donkey, that is symbolic of humility and peace, but as a warrior king on the white horse, that is symbolic of conquest. The great flood came amidst marrying, drinking, and violence, washing mankind away, but 8. The scene will repeat itself, but by fire rather than by water. Biblical truth clearly shows that sin was prospering before the catastrophe struck. Biblical truth also clearly shows that before a catastrophe hits, that God sends his messengers with strong messages, a last warning, and a last chance to repent before the hammer falls on the disobedient. I know the thoughts of gang members because before I became a former gang member, I was a gang leader. I can talk about the things of the devil, but because before I became a Christian, I was serving the devil. I am now a preacher who's gone from gangbanging to evangelizing, from slaying people in the flesh to slaying in the spirit, from preaching the false carnalismo or brotherhood, religion from hell, to preaching the gospel truth. I do not concern myself about the truth hurting someone's feelings, because I'd rather hurt someone's feelings with the truth than to see them perish in hell because they follow the lie. When the truth and the lie cross paths and Demon's mind's activity is stirred up within because the truth is thought-provoking, the truth can change the course of evil's way of living, but only when the person is willing to face up to the truth. The truth is what brings conviction to a person's living a lie. The truth is that many have quit their gangs because the truth has cut through their blinding veil of gang myth and falsehoods, forcing them to start facing the truth. But in order to educate someone about the truth, you yourself must know the truth. Everything that I write about crimes from mother wisdom and from personal experience, and not from watching Hollywood movies, reading books, or by sitting around a prison campfire listening to someone on medication who is skipping lies from what he has heard or read about. I speak with knowledge to which what my own eyes have seen and what my own body has felt from the blows of violence, because I was in the Texas prison system. I was there way before the gangs appeared on the scene, and there before the first gang movie started hitting the scene. So there is nothing that you can tell me about the gangs. So sit back and listen to what I have to say. History has a story to tell. For a century, the Texas prison system was ruled over by a gang of prisoners known as building tenders, or as the Chicanos called them in Spanish, marranos, which means pigs. They were prisoners turned guards who were notorious for raping weaker prisoners and known for their brutality and the murders they committed. While the building tenders were around, there were no prison gangs, but there were over 3,000 heavily armed building tenders. By the late 1970s, in the 12-unit prison system with a prison population of 17,000, a small group of Chicanos organized themselves into a gang that became known as the Texas Syndicate. It was Texas' first prison gang and the building tenders' arch enemy. In the world, 2/3 of all the murders committed are by people who knew the victim. The murderers in some way have convinced themselves that the victims needed killing, just as God knows us better than we do ourselves. So did I, as a top gang leader of the Texas Syndicate, know some of the victims better than their own mothers. Few called our acts murders, while others called our acts a noble service to mankind. When it was a criminals killing criminals, I was convinced that our acts of violence were not a crime under the survival laws of the land, and convinced that we were not sinning under the Old Testament laws of an eye for an eye. I am not saying this to make God our accomplice, nor to justify our past wrongs, But it is the spirit of the age-old argument where if someone is going to judge our bad deeds, then we should be judged in the context of a past time when the Texas government, through its racist conduct and murderous prison system, was breaking local, state, and federal law by organizing, supporting, and arming prisoners to act in the capacity of brutal guards. This story would have never been written had the prison system not been in violation of the laws of the land. At the time of these violent acts, I have truly been convinced in my mind that our violent response to violence were acts of legitimate self-defense. Violence was the only language that the prison administration listened to, and it was this language that the armed building tenders did speak, understand, and respect. So we did what we believed we had to do to survive as humans, and not submissive dogs. And that was to defend ourselves against aggression. In the flesh, I was full of pride that corrupted my wisdom. I took advantage of my God's given gifts, and with them manipulated those that were not so bright. As one of the few masters, I didn't take orders, I gave them. The masters are liable and as guilty as the dogs that were biting the victims with the fangs of steel. In essence, my sincere belief that I was doing the work of God is in fighting evil. The gang was doing what an exorcist does through prayer, but instead of using prayer, we were casting out demons at the point of a shank, or at the end of a smoking gun in the name of God. Evil begets evil. At first I was in denial. I had refused to acknowledge that in fighting evil, we had become just as evil. There was at that time no remorse and guilt for the role that I had played against the building tenders and rival gang members under my own nature. Simply said, I was not sorry for what I did then, though I now admit that I was wrong. Nobody was born into a gang, but thousands of guys that weren't in the gang have come to prison to join one. Obviously, gangs breed in prison and in society that is paying the dear consequences of their investments. When the community is getting back from the prisons, guys that were better off when they went in than when they came out. Contrary to popular belief, the gangs of today have no idea of what they want to achieve. The gangs have no financial structure, no ideology, no nothing besides a life sentence behind bars or an early grave. The gangs have nothing to offer. Then why do guys join a gang? Some join because they are starving for acceptance, recognition, and attention, or joining for a moment of false glamour, illusionary riches, or a tough guy reputation. But I have found that the greatest motivation for a guy joining a gang is fear. Parents don't seem to have any idea of the prisons that state judges are sending their children to. Picture this. You're a scared kid coming off the prison bus. Your mind has already been flooded with all these holy Hollywood gang horrors of gang rapes, gang beatings, and gang murders. You're approached by a gang of heavily tattooed guys minutes after setting foot on prison grounds. What family do you belong to? They ask you with an attitude. There's no middle ground. If your decision is one based on fear, you would join them or run the risk of being preyed on. This is the daily reality for many kids that are entering a Texas prison today. Once a scared kid gets sucked into a gang, he will go through a sudden personality transformation. A prideful, fierce mask will cover his scared face. He'll tattoo his flesh. His language will turn foul, and he'll display an attitude of arrogance, all to protect an image of what he has become. Suddenly, the harmless, scared kid that went into prison comes out being part of the gang image. Let's face it, the guards are not there to protect them. Even when the guards witness in their presence an act of violence, they cannot get involved until backup arrives, and that is minutes later, when it don't take but a minute to die. Then when backup does arrive, it's usually an obese guard who can't even bend over to tie his own shoes. Or it might be a pregnant guard that just had her nails done and hair done. Don't believe don't believe me? Watch the news or tour the prison for yourself as a guest and see, or take a couple of quarters and read the newspaper headlines. Prison guards form their own gangs for protection from prison gangs. Guards fired for drug trafficking in prison, or guard kills wife and self. Correctional officers have one of the highest rates of divorce, heart attacks, depression, and suicides. According to a study by the U.S. Department of Justice, it rates as the fourth most violent job in the United States. The number one problem in the prison and in the neighborhoods are the gangs, and the number one cause of the illness among the prisoners are stress related. The hostile prison environment is an environment that offers no protection, no chance to better oneself, and no hope. It is the environment of fear that gangs breed. Welcome to the House of Horrors, the ticket master dressed in a vampire's costume at the carnival has said to me in 1965 as he took my admission ticket from my hand. I boarded a serpent umbrellas that would take us down the throat of an open-mouthed demon that served at the entrance to our dark journey. People screaming in front and behind me as hissing demons jumped out from the dark corners. The sight terrified them. A picture of hell came to my mind, and in the midst of this pitch darkness and screaming all around me, hell, where those detained for the darkness would scream in terror and gnash their teeth from pain, like that of a woman in labor. The devil, of course, wants you to believe that hell is not real. But what if you wake up someday from your sleep to discover that it is? As our serpent rolled out the exit and into the light, people were holding their chest and relieved that the journey through the dark tunnel was over. They busted out laughing as they recovered from their fears. As the prison chain bus winds itself from prison to prison, delivering its chained human cargo of prisoners, the prisoners will find themselves becoming life characters in their own nightmares, as they will soon discover in every dark nook and cranny of the prison, demons awaiting them. Every person that enters life through the womb will go on a journey, and every journey will have its challenges. I will now take you on one such journey through the devil's playground, a place that you never want to go, a place where I no longer play at.